For 466 days, Palestinians in Gaza have been bombed, starved, shot, and routinely injured. At least 47,000 have been killed, with that number likely to be a significant underestimate given the collapse of Gaza's medical infrastructure. And yet, who knew that the real agony was being felt here in the UK, in Tottenham to be precise? This was Foreign Secretary David Lammy's reaction to the ceasefire. This is a moment of hope after over a year of agony. All phases of the deal must be implemented in full, and we must establish a pathway to lasting peace and security for Israelis and Palestinians alike. My statement on the Israel-Hamas ceasefire. So let's just take a closer look at David Lammy's year of agony. At the beginning of Israel's assault on Gaza, he spent his time trying to justify the country's worst offences.
It's clear to me that it's wrong to bomb a refugee camp. But clearly, if there is a military objective, it can be legally justifiable. It's for Israel to explain its actions.
In February, when the SNP tabled a vote on a ceasefire motion in the House of Commons, this was Lammy's response.
I haven't seen the motion. It's not yet put down. We will scrutinise that motion, as is our way in Parliament. That will come in on Monday, I suspect, Tuesday, and we will take it from there. But look, let us be clear. Yes, we will have a vote in Parliament this week, but it's not that vote that will bring about a ceasefire. It's the diplomatic action. It's Hamas. It's Benjamin Netanyahu. It's Partners for Peace saying the fighting must now stop.
David Lammy, the motion's actually been published already, and we've got it here. The SNP motion says this House calls for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and Israel. It notes with shock and distress that the death toll has now risen beyond 28,000. That is the motion. It is crystal clear. Will Labour vote for it?
Well, look, I've seen that swirling around social media, but that's not a motion. That's just a form of words swirling around social media. And I don't think that was the entirety that you read out.
And when it came to the vote, Lammy was clear about his priorities.
I don't want to do anything in an election year in which the Labour Party might have the privilege of serving that cuts across our ability to do that. And if you look at the detail of that SNP motion, it's not balanced. And that is the problem as I see it with the SNP motion.
In April of last year, while still in opposition, Lammy said this about arms sales to Israel.
I have now been calling for 12 days for David Cameron to publish the legal advice so that we are clear on whether Israel has contravened international humanitarian law and therefore arms sales should be suspended. All of the British public can see the scenes coming out of Gaza, children lying in rubble, deep concerns being made about international human rights law. And for all of those reasons, that advice should be published. And if it is the case that international law has been contravened, then it's absolutely right that offensive arms are suspended to Israel. This has happened in the past. It happened under the Margaret Thatcher administration, and it happened under Gordon Brown's administration. So there is precedent, but it's important now that that advice is published, and so that we can all be clear that if there has been a breach in international humanitarian law, and I must say that I do have very serious concerns, that arms sales are suspended.
But in September, just a few months later, Lammy had changed his tune. Forced by independent legal advice, Lammy agreed to ban just some arms exports to Israel.
It is with regret that I inform the House today the assessment I have received leaves me unable to conclude anything other than that for certain UK arms exports to Israel, there does exist a clear risk that might be used to commit or facilitate a serious violation of international humanitarian law. I have informed my Right Honourable friend, the Business and Trade Secretary, and he is therefore today announcing the suspension of around 30 from a total of approximately 350 to Israel as required under the Export Controls Act.
Now, that was about 10% of all our exports, and it didn't touch the F-35 parts we provide to keep Israeli warplanes in the air. And in July last year, this was one of David Lammy's first acts as Foreign Secretary.
We want a credible and irreversible pathway towards a two-state solution, a safe and secure Israel along a viable, sovereign Palestinian state. We're committed to recognising a Palestinian state as a contribution to a peace process at a time that's most conducive to that process.
That's right. He refused to recognise the existence of a Palestinian state. Then, in October, Lammy took part in this exchange in Parliament.
Comments from the benches opposite that suggest that Israel is somehow conducting a war of annihilation, extermination, and of genocide. There is obviously much suffering in Gaza, and we all accept that. But this terminology is completely inappropriate, not accurate, and is repeated by the protesters and the lawbreakers who are intimidating British Jews, as we saw again this weekend. So will the Foreign Secretary take this opportunity to say that there is not a genocide occurring in the Middle East?
These are quite properly legal terms that must be determined by international courts. But I do agree with the Honourable Gentleman. Those terms were largely used when millions of people lost their lives in crises like Rwanda, the Second World War and the Holocaust. And the way that they are used now undermines the seriousness of that term.
So the British Foreign Secretary thinks he has the power to define genocide in whatever way best suits him politically. In November last year, Lammy was bodied by her UN Special Rapporteur on Palestine, Francesca Albanese.
Excuse me, I can't believe that. He's a lawyer, isn't he?
Yes, a human rights lawyer.
All right. I'm surprised. The first instinct of a lawyer would be to look at the legal documents, the jurisprudence, and probably David Lammy has to explain to the public where did he read that is the number of people killed who define genocide. Probably David Lammy should read Article 2.4 of the Genocide Convention, which refers to an act of genocide that doesn't even involve the killing of one person. Really? But excuse me, what constitutes genocide is established by Article 2 of the Genocide Convention, not personal opinion.
And even though Lammy appears to have done the absolute bare minimum to bring about the end of the genocide in Gaza, he was pretty happy to pitch himself as a key player in bringing about the recent ceasefire.
Look, it was right that the two countries with proximity to Hamas, Egypt and Qatar, alongside the United States with its special relationship with Israel, led these discussions. But of course, it's also been important that we used all diplomatic effort to achieve this. That's why I've been to Israel 3 times in the last 6 months. That's why I'm on the phone every week to all of the major actors. That's why we're committed £100 million worth of British taxpayers' money to the humanitarian effort in Gaza. And we want to see that aid now get in. And that's why, of course, we've been leading the charge on behalf of those hostages that have UK links. This peace that may now have been achieved is very fragile. This is just phase 1. We must move to phase 2 and 3 and a complete ceasefire and a day after. And as you would expect, the United Kingdom will be playing a critical role, both in the humanitarian effort and in those steps to begin to rebuild Gaza, but to get to the two-state solution that will see wider peace between Israel and the Palestinian people.
Helena, on a scale of angry to furious, how do you feel watching David Lammy flip-flopping between all those positions?
I mean, I was both angry and furious at him 15 months ago and for the periods after that. But at this point, I'm totally numb. I'm just totally numb to British politicians just being completely lacking in all principles. And is there anyone who's a better example of the lack of principles in our elected politicians than David Lammy, the most unprincipled sellsword in British politics, who cannot find a single principle and stick to it? He cannot have an ideological position that he will hold dear, or indeed any kind of morality or ethics as a position that he holds dear to himself. He will sell these. He will give these positions up, regardless of where that might leave him politically or internationally, if it means it thinks that he will help his own political career. As far as I'm concerned, from everything that I've seen from him thus far. Of course, we have seen many instances of his own personal hypocrisy from those little clips that you've just shown there. But if you go back, right, you go back to 2018, during the Great March of Return, he was very vociferous in saying that these were massacres of Palestinians by the Israeli government, by the IDF. He explicitly tweeted it out, calling them massacres, and he was right to do so. He can't use that same terminology right now. They died, they've lost their lives. No, they were massacred by Israel, and they were massacred back then too. He even said to Theresa May at the time that it would be bending the knee to Trump and to hold his hand, metaphorically, like she did physically when she met Trump at the White House. And that was very vociferous language towards Donald Trump. Good, that's what we like to see, vociferous language towards Trump and in defense of the Palestinian people. Yet, now he is currently the foreign secretary. Suddenly, when it comes to Israel, of course, he's been very much happy to continue to give them the quote-unquote benefit of the doubt, even though it's something that shouldn't be given to them at all, given what we've seen on our own phones and the things that they have done over the last 15 months. And when it comes to Donald Trump, suddenly he's turned on a dime. Trump was very nice to me. He bought me 2 dinners, he was saying in an interview to Shahab Khan at ITV. To which, of course, the response was, well, you'll change your mind over a political leader if they buy you dinner? This man is staggeringly unprincipled. It just beggars belief watching this man switch positions. And also very interesting to see, he was a member of Labour Friends of Palestine right up until 2019. Suddenly, it's actually, we've got the sensible grown-ups in charge of the Labour Party. Well, I can't look too pro-Palestine now, can I? So immediately is not a member throughout the 2019 to 2024 Parliament, when he's looking to angle towards a position within the shadow cabinet for people like Keir Starmer. And suddenly now he's foreign secretary. There's Israeli lobbyist money on the line, potentially, should he change his position and be more friendly with Israel and have meetings with the Israeli ambassador, who, as people know, I have a very low opinion of, who've watched this channel for quite a long time. I should be angry. I should continue to be angry at him. And I think you can probably get the anger is still there in my voice. But at this point, I have 0% surprise. I do not expect this man to hold a single position and stick to it, because he's clearly shown, as has been evidenced over the last 15 months, that he will never hold any principal positions. And all that matters to him, as far as I can see, in my personal opinion from the actions that he's taken, that fundamentally is the case. This political career is more important to him than the rule of law, than human life of the people in Palestine, for example, over his potential favour that he can curry with people who are pro-Israel, which, to be fair, are vanishingly small in this society. But people keep trying to say, well, they have to say these things, otherwise it can be politically damaging for them as a political party within Labour, Lammy and Keir Starmer alike. They have to toe the pro-Israel line, otherwise it could be politically damaging for them. Well, we've covered it over and over and over and over again on this channel. The people in the UK are not pro-Israel. They are pro-Palestine. The sympathies, Palestine win or either side wins, much more about people who are sympathetic to specifically Israel. The British public has massively been in support of the arms embargo, a total arms embargo, not this wishy-washy 10% nonsense that we've gotten from David Lammy in the past 7 months. And they have been pro-sanctions on Israeli war criminals, and indeed being far more vociferous in their calls for the removal of things like settlements in the West Bank. And this man has fallen short of the yardsticks that not just the pro-Palestine people that, like we are over here on the left, who've been vociferously pro-Palestine, have wanted him to support, but now the British public in plurality, and in majority in most cases, now supports as well. And the only thing that fills that gap, that bridges that divide between public opinion and his actions, is that there are other interests at play, whether it's political careerism or the interests of the Labour Party and their lobby at large.
David Lammy's constituency that he's talking to is not Tottenham, it's not Britain, it's, the people that can, this man wants to be Prime Minister. That's ultimately his goal. And he does everything that he needs to do, that he thinks he needs to do in order to make it there. And it's also worth saying that not only has he not lived up to the principles that he has previously articulated? I can even forgive that, like, once you get into power, you can't hold on to every single position that you might have had before you were in power, that there are different interests at play, whatever. Even if I can accept that, he is actually not even gone as far as David Cameron went when he was foreign secretary. When David Cameron was foreign secretary, he not only placed a ban on what he called extremist Israeli settlers coming into Britain, but he was also considering doing sanctions against what he would quote extreme members of the Israeli government. I believe Ben Gvir and Smotrich were part of that. And when Lammy introduced the bill or introduced the measures to sanction these so-called extremist West Bank Israeli settlers, he didn't even go as far as David Cameron to also condemn the likes of Smotrich and Ben Gvir within that. So he's not even reaching the bar of the status quo, and that's what's just so shameful about it.